how are we doing? We've got, we have all our counselors, we have our clerk, we have our planning assistant, we have our planner. And I see we have Scott Nash, and I think that just accounts, just about accounts for everybody. So welcome everybody. It's 6:32. I will call the meeting to order. And as is our custom, we'll start with the national anthem and our land acknowledgement. We have no sound, Madam CAO. Okay. Municipality of Whitestone recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded, and or treaty lands of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. Is there any pecuniary interest to disclose? All right. The record shown undeclared. Thank you. Can we approve our agenda for this evening? Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second,
I'll
Councillor McEwen.
Okay, I got Councillor McEwen first. Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question.
Go
A
ahead.
week or more ago, I was asking, when we set up this special meeting, additional meeting, I was asking what the planning items were, and they were sent out. And on there was discussion on, I think it was the official plan amendment. It was either number 2 or B or whatever. I think it was the trailer bylaw that's been outstanding for a long time. And then when the agenda came out last week or late last week, it wasn't on there. So can I ask why and what's happened to the trailer bylaw, and if I've got that right, and if so, what's the future of it? I know it's not on tonight, and I'm not suggesting it be put on, but I just was surprised that somehow it got dropped. So, thank you.
Thanks. Good question. I will let the clerk answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
you're correct, Councillor Lamb. There was the consideration to have it on the agenda. And then we realized that we needed to do some notifications to all of the road associations and the lake associations. And of course, we had the Christmas holidays and New Year's. Our planning assistant was away until January 10th. So we put all that together and decided that we better just wait, do proper notification, which will happen by the end of the week, I hope. And it'll be on the February meeting. So that's OPA 2. That's both the trailers and the backlots that council asked Mr. Jackson to address, to review all the comments and prepare a report. So you will see it on the February regular council meeting. And we'll be sending out notifications by the end of the week or early next week.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, is anyone opposed to the agenda? All right, I will declare it carried. So we do have a few planning items. So as our usual practice, we'll move into committee of the whole to discuss those. The motion's on the floor. So could I have a mover and seconder to move into committee of the whole, please?
I'll move. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods, seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Gorham Matthews. Thank you. That the council of Mist Valley Whitestone move into committee of the whole at 6:38 p.m. Is anyone opposed to that motion? All right, thank you. That's carried and we are in committee of the whole. So we'll start with item 5.1, which is a consent application from the Buczynskis. Mr. Jackson, would you like to introduce that for us, please?
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This application is in downtown Dunchurch. Mr. John Buczynski and his family have a property that fronts on Highway 124, Moore Drive, and Whitestone Lake. They are proposing to create a total of 4 new lots, 2 lots that will have access off Moore Drive, and 2 lots that will be accessed off Highway 124, as described in the report or memo that's been circulated as part of the agenda package. I think that there'd be obvious questions about the number of lots, but my sense is that whenever we can get development in what I'll call a mini settlement area like Dunchurch, it represents good development. I think the standards of the lots are the size that won't create any issues with respect to density. The only outstanding issue, if I can describe it like that, is we've circulated this perhaps a month ago to MTO. They've acknowledged reading it, but we don't have any comments from them. I'm hoping that they will not have a problem with the additional access off of Highway 124 entrances that exist to oppose the 2 lots that are on the interior portion of the property. It's similar to many cases where the backstory is they have lots of costs associated with the property and need to generate income, but I think the community also is a winner because this is good development. We like to see happen to bolster the areas we've targeted for growth. So there are a number of conditions which will include a rezoning to recognize the lot sizes, clearance from MTO, and the typical standard conditions about parkland dedication and addressing. Not sure if there are any questions, your worship. Be happy to answer what I could.
Okay, thank you. Just for my benefit, I'm looking at the sketch, which is on, that shows the 4 lots. It's page 7 of 39 in the revised agenda. I'm assuming that the exact frontage and size of, well, the sizes are marked there, but the exact frontage of them is not shown in your table. Is that because it's subject to MTO approval, or?
Well, it'll be
And,
subject, yes, the lots on Moore Drive are noted as
Yeah.
having 90-meter frontages. The critical thing would be the area in all the cases of these lots, and the area of 1 hectare is found to be such that there wouldn't be any contamination of neighboring wells from septics. We've configured the lots on Highway 124 just to give them some access, but the reality is that our policy requires some frontage on a publicly maintained road, so that the amendment that would be required would recognize the actual frontages that are surveyed out.
Is there not, though, a minimum frontage on road frontage of what, 45 meters or
60 actually.
60?
is
So,
it- But in this case, we pretty much anticipate MTO only being supportive to share the frontage on the existing entrance at this location. And MTO
So-
seems to have a chronic problem with creating any new lots having direct access off the highway. So this is what this is going to accomplish, is hopefully some non-objection from MTO.
okay, and am I right in saying that Sever 3 is in behind the self-storage place? Is that where it is? Is that what's in front of it? That's already on the, that chunk out of the parcel that is referred to as Sever 3? Is that?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Those are my questions. So councilors, do you have,
Yeah, I have a couple.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm generally supportive of this. John, when we're creating 4 lots, I thought that was always defined as a subdivision. And we've discussed this many times over the years. Am I wrong?
I think the general practice is to recognize a tipping point of 3 new lots and 1 retained. But there's no hard and fast rule. There's no legislative requirement. And we do have a policy that says that in certain circumstances, you can vary that tipping point up or down. I get the impression that he's creating 2 lots on an existing open road off Moore Drive. He's creating 2 lots joining that'll be accessed off the highway. So I see them kind of as having distinct transaction features, so that you're not triggering what is the common kind of concern, and that is extending municipal services. So other than Hydro One, I don't see any public services actually being triggered as part of this. So I think the overriding planning merit comes from it's in the village, and we can use more density in the village, which helps sustain things like retail, service, other amenities that one tries to achieve with these growth targeted areas. So I think all those sort of bundled together kind of gives us the ability to be flexible in terms of that hard line, which is only a hard line if it needs to be a hard line.
But isn't there some, I mean, we didn't just make up, I just didn't make up the 4 lots. Isn't it in our official plan or something, or somewhere that it says
But-
4, excuse me?
Oh, sorry.
Isn't there somewhere in there that it says 4 lots shall be deemed a subdivision, and then there's a whole set of rules that are come into effect for a subdivision?
Yeah, if you look, I'm not sure, I've got the report in front of me, but if you look on what is page 5, the policy insert is there, and that has that flexibility built into it. So our general rule is 3 and 1, but it says that you can vary that in circumstances. And it's my opinion that this warrants that kind of flexibility.
Okay. My second question is, you say on what's page 9 of 39 in my agenda, it says that the lot in a paragraph after 18.05, you talk about lot standards are generally consistent with the intent of the policy. And I read, as I think the mayor was kind of getting at, that somehow that this 45, or you said 60 meters on the highway wasn't 45 or 60 meters. And so I guess when I was looking, I was saying, heck, it's all kinds of room. This is a big chunk of property, right? So why aren't the amount owned by each of these lots, these 2 lots on the highway, why isn't the amount on the highway much wider? Like why is it being constrained like that? Like, why wouldn't they be wider?
Well,
They can
again-
still have one driveway, but I mean, why wouldn't why wouldn't it meet our policy? If I've got it right.
The critical thing in this instance, in my view, is area, because we are dealing with, I'm going to characterize them as village type properties. So what you don't want is you don't want them to have a density that threatens things like cross contamination. I don't know that you'd be able to create I think it's sever lot 3 by extending it to 60 meters. You could probably do that with sever lot 4, but I don't know that you'd be able to, if you understand my point on that. Like, you couldn't move sever lot 3 over without kind of skewing it in a very artificial way with no real purpose. So
Oh, I don't understand that. I don't know why 3 wouldn't go over. I mean, you've got all this land. Why 3 wouldn't simply go over further and make it a wider area on Highway 124, and sever 4, then pick up and go over further. I mean, there's so much land there that I don't know why you couldn't do that. Like, and therefore you've got wider areas on the highway that they enter the highway. Maybe I'm not seeing it right, but I don't know why we're crowding them in on the highway and saying, wow, they kind of generally make it, when you've got all this other land. You've got the retained area is a massive piece of land.
yeah,
Like, why are we crowding it in and talking about, I don't know, maybe I'm not
the only
talking right here.
I didn't design the lots per se, but I think that once you hit the threshold in kind of a hub center, as Dunchurch is in our policy direction, do you really want to contaminate, if that's the right word, any future considerations? Because at some point, you want to make as efficient use of land as you can. I could take that back to Mr. Brzezinski's family and say, you know, it is council's desire that the lots have 60 meters frontage on the highway. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm not
Well,
sure.
it's just that I read them as, when I look at it here, they're so small. 39.7 is one and 38.4 is the other. And
Yeah,
I don't know why, and you're saying that our official plan or standard is 60?
no, our zoning is,
Our zoning is 60.
yes.
So I see no reason why both those lots couldn't be 60 on the highway. I just don't know why we would crowd them like that.
I think to do so is physically possible, but all I'm suggesting is that if you skew them over, both so that they have that, you will actually likely double the size of the lots. And maybe you think,
What's
And-
wrong with that?
well, I'm just saying, I don't like to waste land if I don't have to. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I don't know, maybe my other council colleagues will agree or disagree with me. I just don't know why we're doing it. I mean, is it a game changer? I don't know, but I don't, we got lots of land to meet our standards, but yet we're not going to meet our standards. I don't get it. Like, anyway, so I'll be done with it.
Just as an analogy that might help, if you think of lots that are taken off of a terminus that is in a cul-de-sac, often you make exceptions for that because you know, they taper downwards into a pie shape that's often less than the standard. So there's no sanctimony, if that's a word, to that 60 meters in the zoning, as much as I say the area is. Now, when you're dealing with things like waterfront land, the density control there is the frontage. So there you don't want to compromise because it has a different meaning. But I mean, I could take this back. I'm not adverse to that.
Okay, thank you. Other counselors,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a comment.
Councilor McEwen, go ahead.
The 1 hectare, that's effectively by old terms 2 acres, as I understand it, 2 acres plus. I know my lot of actual buildable usable property is only 0.8 of 1 acre. So 2 acres is a considerable piece of property in terms of a residential lot size. I don't know what advantage there'd be to making them go larger on the lots to satisfy, say, some other rule. If the MTO come back with something, then we might have to. The 30 some on the front, that's meters, I'm assuming. So that's a fair distance across there already in terms of an entrance. And if it's a shared entrance, which probably MTO will ask for, I think I can go with it. I'm just curious, Mr. Jackson, when you're looking at 124, for instance, under MTO jurisdiction these days, is Whitestone not in a sort of 300-foot limit or some sort of 300 something meter, or I think it's feet? There's some smaller limit or bigger limit the MTO require along their roads. Is the 30 meters, 39 meters satisfactory?
I think it's more about entrances, if I can explain it that way. And I don't know what MTO will say. MTO likes to say no for any ask. That's because it elevated 124 to certain limited sort of access standards. There are exceptions to areas that are determined to be within the 50-kilometer zone. What those will be, I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if they came out and just opposed both those lots, 3 and 4. And I would be disappointed because, as I said, I think those are good building lots for the community. And I don't know the answer to that, even though MTO acknowledged that they've seen this as their confirming that they've read the circulation of it, so. And a hectare is 2.5 acres. So they're 2.5 acres. They are good sized lots.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Other councillors?
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
I think you guys read my notebook today. Between you and Councillor Lamb, you pretty much said everything, but the one thing I was thinking the most about was, again, the 39 meters on the highway. And then it's going to be a shared driveway between the two of them on the highway and then split? Am I getting that right?
Right now, if I could, Your Worship, through you, say that I think that access serves a half a dozen or more lakefront properties. So it would be adding 2 more users. I do not believe MTO would support additional entrances. But again, I'm speculating based on my experience over the past few years.
Can I ask which access you're referring to? I don't see it on this.
It's on the second page of the report that has the air photo outlined in
Oh,
yellow.
yeah.
And where that little indentation is from the lots on the shoreline is where it heads towards, if you can blow it up or look at it carefully.
Oh, and so it goes straight. It's somewhat to the east of of that self-storage place, which I can see, but it goes straight, it goes all the way back to that sort of there's a kind of a notch cut out of the
Yes,
property back from that's not at the lake, but back from it. Am I right? Is that a road going in
Yes.
there?
yes.
Okay. I see what you mean. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'm curious why that wouldn't have been highlighted on the plan that we're looking at. That adds a whole different sort of dimension to it, because that's a dividing line in a sense, a road going down the side of all these lots, which we weren't aware of.
Yeah.
Just to explain, it's a right of way, so it's owned by the Bajinskis. It does
Mhm.
not create a natural severance of any
Okay.
shape.
But it does have an entrance. Does it already have an entrance to 124?
Oh, yes, yes.
So why wouldn't they be able to continue to use it?
Oh, the question is, would they allow it to be increased in terms of traffic?
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
MTO is
okay.
they
Yeah,
stick with-
no, all right, I understand. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, other questions, or comments?
Yeah, hello, Mr. Mayor. It's Scott Nash. If all the councilors are done, would I be able to have the opportunity to ask a couple questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I guess it's, I have kind of 3 questions, and I guess the first one is on the 40 meters versus 60 meters. If council was to give approval on 40 meters versus 60 meters, would that not be setting precedences? And I know currently there's some big debate on back lots. And if you allow somebody to do 40 meters here, would that not there give precedence possibly to allowing a back lot to only be 40 meters because you've done it somewhere else? That's my first question. And my second one kind of goes with that. If it's going to be a shared road, why would there not be under recommendations of 5126 noted that would spell out everything and be put on title that everybody's aware that there's a shared access road? And the third question would be, if there is already a road there, would that not be considered a private road? And why would this be discussed now if the private roads hasn't been passed yet, or maybe it won't be passed? And the last question would be, if it sounds like there's some debate if MTO would even allow this, and why wouldn't council wait until MTO does approve it, hopefully, so that the owner would be able to get the 4 lots? I think as a resident of the area, having more lots in Dunchurch is a great idea, but I wouldn't understand why a 5126 wouldn't be allowed, why you can do 40 versus 60, which might bring problems up for back lots, why council wouldn't want to wait until they've heard from MTO. I'm not sure who would answer those questions, but those are my comments or questions for this one. Thank you very much for the time to talk.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Mr. Jackson, do you want to try and take those on? Those questions?
I think that we've talked many times about the precedent issue. There are no precedents in planning, and I know it's trite law, but we've talked about this time and time again. And so it has to be understood that no 2 planning applications are viewed the same, different than the decisis principle of British common law, where if one judge has identical cases, he must rule in the same fashion. That, however, does not take place in trite law under planning cases. It's quite distinct when you're dealing with something that's referred to as a community or a settlement area, similar to what we have here. So none of the kinds of discussions that Mr. Nash is talking about are relevant. This does not create lots that don't front on a public road, and that perhaps is a little bit of a technicality, but that's how we circumvent that issue. So this is nowhere near the backlot kind of consideration for a whole host of reasons. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I did have another question that often kind of comes up in my mind about things, about lots like this. I'm assuming that each one of these lots to be built upon would require its own septic system and its own well. Do we know for certain that that's possible?
Well, what we're told by the science is that hydrogeologically speaking, when we're only talking less than 6 lots, there are no triggered D4 guidelines that require us to confirm the presence of groundwater or the ability of the soil to accept septic system design. We do know that all of the well drillers that work in this geography guarantee water. Whether that in science has a lot of fact, I think by virtue of having this 1 hectare lot size, you've virtually, I think, have eliminated any concern in that regard, and that's been our experience. New septic systems can be located within a few hundred square feet of a property, and these lots have 10,000 square meters, which works out to be probably 125,000 square feet. So I don't think that there's an issue here in any regard in terms of getting services for private wells and septics.
Okay, but there wasn't a thought that there would be a shared septic or anything like that.
No, that's not. That is against the law. You are not allowed to share services lots have to be totally sustainable.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Mr. Mayor, just
go
as,
ahead.
just as an aside, of course, this property's, as far as I know, is the property where the snowmobile trail goes in, right? Right now. And, you know, I've been down that many, many, many times, so I'm familiar with the property, not that it weighs into this at all, but the snowmobile trail is right there, so.
Okay, well, are there any other questions or comments about this one? Well, if not, we'll come back later and I guess decide what to do with it. That brings us to item 5.2, which is a group application to close and convey shore road allowances on Wawashkesh. And there are four there are four existing auditors there. Gary Merritt, the Pottingers, Lisa Jane Rice, and Drew Burrell. So once again, Mr. Jackson, you want to make any introductory comments about this one?
Just, it's a group application of 4 adjoining property owners up on the shores of Lake Wawashkesh. It's the municipality's policy where shore road allowances exist, that it supports the closure of those shore road allowances unless there's some specific natural heritage feature that might prevent it, or whether or not it has an access use. All of the property owners have their neighbors acknowledge and consent to the extension of the lines. We've checked the area for encroachment of any type 1 fish habitat, and it appears free and clear of that. So this is a standard case where the municipality would support the closure in principle, subject to only transferring the portion that's above the high water mark on the lake, and following the procedures in terms of notice, fees, etc. Don't see any red flags on this joint application, Worship.
Okay, thank you. We'll open it up for questions.
Mr. Mayor, just one quick question, I guess. When we mentioned the Merritt family and some of the issues that go on back in that neck of the woods, there is no concern about this being any way affecting the ongoing issues around those properties, Mr. Jackson?
No, totally not relevant to that background. These are like independent kind of transactions that won't eliminate the merit issues coming back towards council sometime in the future, but these aren't at all related.
All right.
So I'll ask again. Are there any other questions? I have one, but are there others?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Lamb, go ahead.
Yeah, John, I assume that I can't find any, that there's no road allowance going down to the lake in this area. In other words, we're not preventing the public from getting to the lake or in front of these properties because there's a road allowance. There's no road allowance in the area, right?
No, there is none.
Okay, thank you. And there's no there's no interference with an environmentally protected or fish habitat area. There's no issues there.
No issues.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? So I guess I have one question, because this is an area that I'm fairly familiar with, and I don't, clearly I don't have any objection in principle to people acquiring their shore road allowances, but if I look at the diagram, which is on, probably the best place to see it is page 12 of 39. If you look at that diagram, you will see that there is a you can see the 4 lots, and the largest one, which is towards the top of the is the one that belongs to Gary Merritt, and you can see a little piece of water there, and then across from that, sort of in the northwesterly direction, across from that is an island, which is Arbor Vitae Island. And the little piece of water in between there is it's what is referred to on some maps as Sneak Channel. I don't know where they came up with that name. It's not, it's fairly recent, I have to say, but that channel is about, I mean, it looks like it's of consequence here, but it's actually at the narrowest point, perhaps 30 feet across, and the maximum depth of water, well, I won't say the maximum, the depth of water that you would get in midsummer when the lake is at the sill head of the dam is probably about 15 inches or something like that. It's not 2 feet for sure, maybe 18. So it's a kind of a shallow, marshy area that is normally inhabited by a heron, and I know that because I kayak through there. So now it looks on your diagram as if there's the shore road allowance that you would be attaching to the Merritt property is only on the westerly side of the property, because the dark black line goes right out to the water. Is that, am I reading that correctly, or does it? I'll tell you why I'm asking. The 66 feet, if you were to take the 66 feet from I'm going to say in the sort of northerly direction, north is this diagram isn't quite, north isn't quite straight up, but it's pretty close. So in the northerly direction, if you took the 66 feet on that part between that and Arbor Vitae Island, and you took the 66 feet from Arbor Vitae Island, they would actually join together. And this situation occurred between the mainland and another island on Awashkesh down off Parker Bay Road. It's called Harrison's Island, Harrison's Landing. And they had a similar situation. The folks acquired their shore road, the folks on the 2 parts of property. And by the way, in this case, I believe Mr. Merritt owns that corner piece of Arbor Vitae Island. If the owners each purchased their shore road allowance, it doesn't look like there's one on Arbor Vitae either. So maybe it doesn't apply in this case. I'm trying to find out. But what they did in this other case is the owners got together and they basically built a causeway right through the 2 feet of water to join the island to the shoreline, without anyone's consent, of course. And I'm just concerned that I mean, I would consider that to be a violation of environmental policies. I want to make sure that that isn't potentially a side effect down the road of if that shore road allowance goes all the way around.
If, I don't have, I only have the package electronically, so it's underneath my tablet that I'm talking through, but the very last sketch shows sort of a blow up of Gary Merritt's property and the flooded land between Arboreta Island. And I'm not sure if I can, I'm showing you, this should be in your package, Council. Can you see it? On the sketch there?
You said the very last sketch.
It's a blow up of the survey plan. And I think if you had that up, can you see it on my screen here? I've got high technology.
I can see it. They're surrounded in yellow. I guess the question is, I don't know where well, of course, I don't see a shore road allowance on there. I'm assuming it hasn't been surveyed, of course.
Well, but the water's edge that discerns the flooded portion of the shore road allowance is shown. And it shows block 10, which is the flooded portion between the island, which I presume at one time was part of the mainland.
Yeah, when I was a kid, before the dam got rebuilt, you couldn't go through there at all in low water.
I don't know, if maybe Michelle could share the screen. My high tech is holding up against the camera. But what I'm trying to say is that the survey work that's done shows there's a very distinctive break in the shore road allowance where the whole of the shore road allowance goes submarine, so to speak. It's flooded. The whole of the shore road allowance is flooded, separating the island from.
All right. Okay. Well, that's kind of what I wondered. If that was the case, then I wouldn't have a concern about it because I was just concerned that somebody could argue that, oh, well, you know, the two shore road allowances merge together. And if one person owns both of them, they could say, well, fine, I'm going to reclaim that land and fill it in. And I realized that they would need to get permission from MNR and Fisheries and Oceans to do that, but we already have a precedent where somebody did it without getting anyone's permission, and the matter was referred to because people complained to the MNR, and they basically said, nah, not going to do anything about it.
Interesting, because the jurisdiction is truly DFO, and DFO would do something about it.
Well, but usually that you get at DFO by going through MNR. I don't know. Anyway, maybe that's another. All I wanted to make sure was that we weren't somehow joining by. It wasn't paving the way for somebody to sort of join the whole thing together and say, well, it's really one piece of property. But it looked on the earlier diagram that I asked you about, it looked as if there wasn't really a shore road allowance there for all intents and purposes, because I'm assuming because it went out into the water, and if you go back a couple of pages, you'll see your black line goes right along the. You've drawn, or whoever drew it has drawn a shore road allowance, but not but it doesn't cover that narrow channel. Okay, well, look, I don't want to prolong this. Are there any other questions or comments about this one?
Mr. Mayor, one quick one.
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
This little channel that you're talking about that you kayak through. Well, page 15 to 39 in this package, is that not the part that would be shown all dotted and it says EP? Is that not fish habitat all through there? It would come right back around the corner.
Let me take a
On the
look.
picture I'm looking at anyway.
15.
Maybe page 4 of John's package, but 15 to 39 in our agenda. Or am I looking at this wrong?
Oh, I think that's the next.
If I could
No,
weigh
it
in,
isn't. Go ahead.
I just say that the whole of Sneak Channel looks like it's EP. If that's what Counselor Woods is bringing forward.
You're right. It is.
Yeah, and it comes out.
So we
around
don't,
that little hook.
we don't sell road allowance in EP. Is that,
That's right.
all right, okay, sorry, that's the simple answer to my long convoluted question. I apologize. I somehow didn't notice that it was, in fact, okay. So thank you, Councillor Woods. That's brings some sense to that issue. And are there any others? Any other comments on that one?
Mr. Mayor, it's Scott Nash again. I have a really simple question on this one, if I might.
Uh-huh.
I think Councillor Woods just asked very similar to what my question was here. At the top of the page, you see where that, I think you called it Sneak Channel is, and it shows all these dotted lines in EP. And at the very bottom of the fourth lot, I'll call it, if the merit lot is number 1 at the bottom, it also shows EP. And I understand from what you'd said, or Mr. John Jackson had said, you guys don't sell the shore allowance in front of EP or fish habitat. So I guess my question would be, I know in previous files it's been talked about how these photographs or these maps are done a long time ago, and it shows in generality where stuff is, but not a defining line. So has anybody gone out, like an environmentalist, to check where the exact limit of the EP zone is for type 1 fish habitat or environmentally protected area to ensure that none of those lands are transferred over? And if not, why wouldn't have that been done already? And that's my questions, and again, sorry to bug everybody, but I think it's important to ensure the protected areas remain protected, right? So, thank you.
Mr. Jackson, once again.
I gather the question is, how accurate do we think that the limits of the EP boundary is? These were done originally perhaps 30 years ago. They were put on a set of Ontario base maps that were then translated into our GIS system. The GIS people undertake imagery about every 2 or 3 years, so we're very fortunate to have that resource available. And so we look at the several years of aerial imagery, and we don't see anything that would create this questionable limits or accuracy. So we're pretty confident that the way it was done originally is still pretty accurate. Where it would become perhaps a critical issue is if there was a structure proposed near or in it, and then that's when the building department would look at it very closely in terms of infield. But we're pretty comfortable with the data that we have to be able to conclude that we're not encroaching on the principle of not selling lands, shore road allowance lands that are environmental protected.
Okay, thank you for the answer. So I guess in closing, that would mean that there should never need to be a requirement on purchasing a shore road allowance for an environmentalist to go out and measure what type 1 and type 2 fish habitat is. But thanks for your answer. That's great.
I think looking at that diagram, there is a, I mean, I've got it blown up to 200% on my screen here, but the big letters EP that have the red arrow going through the P, they really apply to that hatched area that looks like it's marked like it's swamp, right? Which is below the the EP. I don't think they apply to the lot that the red arrow is pointing out. Is that a correct interpretation, John?
I'm not sure which sketch you're referring to.
I'm
Are you
referring to page, oh dear, do you have the page? Do you have the page numbers? We do?
Not, I have my hard copy in the file.
It's 15 of 39, but it's a diagram that it's the second to last diagram before the conclusion recommendation part.
Oh,
Underneath it, it says the aerial imagery confirms that the shoreline of the applicant's land is
got it.
critical fish habitat or contains critical. Right?
Yeah.
That diagram.
Got it, yeah.
But do you agree with what I just said?
Oh, sorry, what was the question?
I said that the designation EP with the red arrow going through it does not apply to the bit of shore road allowance that's shown on the parcel that the red arrow is going to. It applies to the piece down immediately below the letters EP where there's a hatched area designating marsh. And that is my recollection of it. To be honest, from my recollection of being in there, all four of those lots have, good access to the water, open water without any marshland around them on the west side. However, the one that is below it, that's also another little channel that in high water days you used to be able to get a canoe or a kayak through. That is definitely, I would consider that environmentally protected land. And those people actually have a little bridge that goes over it, that goes to the people who have a cottage there, actually have a bridge that goes over it. You can't go through there. It's too small.
But it must have been a structure that had predated the municipality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I say a bridge. It's not a road bridge. It's a walking bridge. They walk. They don't. That's how they.
I think I've been on it.
Yeah. It doesn't. You couldn't drive anything across it. Okay, sorry, not to prolong this. Let's go to 5.3 if we can, which is this is an application to close part of a municipal road allowance, close and purchase in order to provide space for a septic system. Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, so this is an application. Again, no two applications are the same, and nor is this one. This property owner has a long, shallow lot that backs onto a municipal road allowance adjacent to the landing, the public landing at Shawniga Lake. And his property is constrained because of its depth, and he wants to acquire a part of the road allowance to be able to place a septic system on that road allowance to allow for upgrades on the cottage. The sticky part of this is that technically this road allowance leads to water and has been, part of a number of discussions that council's had in the past. There are a couple of options discussed, whether you sell all of it, a portion of it, or simply deploy an encroachment authorization. I'm not sure what option would be preferred by council. So I didn't do anything other than express those options.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question?
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
I'm assuming they have a septic system already and they need a bigger septic system? Is that the case?
That's my understanding, Your Worship.
John, in the last, well, on the ones on 124 Brzezinski, you said you get away with a septic system on a couple hundred square feet. They don't have a couple hundred square feet area that they could put a septic system to service their cottage here?
Sometimes it's not so much the system consumption of area, it's the clearances. If it's a raised bed, you need 6 meters. You probably know all this. Or if it's a structure, you need a certain amount of clearance. Or from the water, you need 15 meters. You need clearances from sidelines, property lines. So I don't know the actual details of the constraints, but it's quite, I think, clear that they do exist here. Now, I think, if I'm not talking out of school, actually, the CEO may have more details than I do about this particular application. Don't mean to throw it over to you, Michelle, but I don't know those kinds of specific details where the preferred septic location is on the renovation plans.
Do you, can you comment, Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, no, I don't have any further information. I know the Roots sent a letter, which I believe council got after the fact. It wasn't originally attached to the package, or the drawing wasn't. And I just need our planning assistant to confirm that it was sent, but there were a couple of options where there was a purchase of a small section, just 33 feet of the road allowance, and then a certain length to accommodate a septic, or the full length of the road allowance right to the water. That the Roots offered a couple of options, but beyond that, I haven't spoken to these folks, and we've dealt with them with a dock issue, but it really had nothing to do with their septic. So I'm sorry, I'm not particularly helpful. Perhaps our planning assistant is.
Paula, can you help us here?
It may be a case, Your Worship, if I could jump in, that I'm looking at the two, in the package, there are two options, 1 and 2. To be able to better answer Councillor Wood's question, maybe we do need the benefit of a detailed site plan showing the clearances that he needs to be able to intelligently determine how much of the shore road allowance that is necessary to place a septic on it. Does that make sense?
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, further to that, Mr. Jackson, even your option 4, you say we may wish to obtain details on the septic system design. That would have been something that was kind of significant in my mind. Maybe they only need 15 feet on one little sliver of the allowance. It seems like a broad brush for them to ask or somebody to put in there that there's 33 feet requested all the way around along the road allowance. I don't see it as being a road allowance probably that'll ever be used, since we have the access to the lake within a couple hundred feet to the north of that. But that's not to preclude our thinking of maintaining road allowances best we can, regardless of how much use they get, if there's potential that it would ever be used in the future. maybe they only need a little 10 or 15 foot, say 5 meters in on it or something at some certain location if we had the design.
Maybe, your worship, through you, the thing to do is just to take that direction back to Mr. and Mrs. Root and say, you know, it's hard for us to make a decision without knowing your exact septic location and the needs for the road allowance to be able to accommodate that. I think that's fair.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor?
Well, okay, Councillor Lamb was first and then
Yeah, I
Councillor
guess.
Gorham-Matthews.
Yeah, I guess I look at this in the backdrop of, you know, again, it's a road allowance going down to a body of water. And, you know, you have to think long-term in this thing in terms of what you may or may not need into the future, even though there is, I guess, access pretty close to here. But when I read the Roots letter or whatever, it said, you know, we want to put, you know, a newer cottage, a bigger cottage, an extension to our cottage or whatever. And we need more room for the septic, but it said for a traditional septic. And I know today's world, now I'm not a septic expert by any means, but I know down my neck of the woods here, I've been down on Bear's Paw where they had a septic that took, you know, I'm going to say only a fraction of what in terms of room of what a traditional septic might use. Now, I know this one was a very modern one that needed to be inspected every year or every 6 months or something, but these people were very, very environmentally motivated, and they put this system in. So I guess my question would be to the Roots or to whoever, like, why would, I mean, are there not septic systems that you can put in to your own property that would fit your property? New modern system, and therefore negate the bill or the necessity to buy a portion of the road allowance. You could use your money to put a proper septic, smaller septic in. So I don't know exactly the answer to that, but I would like that investigated. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Gorham-Matthews, you.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say kind of overlaps with what Councillor Lamb was just talking about there, that, you know, the standards have probably changed from the original septic they had in, and as well, when they're changing the size of their cottage, they're probably necessitated now with the new standards to change the capacity of their septic system. But I think we need more information in terms of what they've investigated and what they actually need in terms of space and what type of septic that they want to put in. I'm all for someone updating their septic. I certainly don't want to discourage them from doing that. I think that's something that we certainly want to encourage all ratepayers to investigate, that their septics are to capacity and up to standard. But before we look at how much space they need to move off their property, I think we need a bit more information.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments about this one? All right, if not, perhaps we could reconvene to a regular meeting and then we'll deal with the resolutions that have come out of this. Can I get a mover and seconder to reconvene, please?
I'll move, Councillor.
I'll move.
So I heard
I'll
Councillor
second.
Lamb or sorry, Councillor McEwen
Yes.
moved, and was it Councillor Woods seconded?
Yeah, I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right. At 7:40 p.m. we are back in regular session. So the first item then that we talked about was the Wyszynski application. I have a motion. I'll read it to you and we'll see if anyone wants to Move it and second it. Whereas John Jackson Planner Incorporated has prepared a report for the Perry Sound Area Planning Board regarding consent application B45/2021 Whitestone from Vuchinsky et al. And provided a copy to the municipality of Whitestone. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receives this report as information, and that the council of the municipality of Whitestone recommends this consent application for approval in principle, subject to the following conditions. And there are 5 of them. Number 1, the payment of a parkland dedication fee be made in accordance with the current municipal fees and charges bylaw. 2, that the new lots receive 911 addressing from the municipality. 3, that the newly created lots be rezoned to the rural residential zone. 4, that a clearance letter be obtained from the Ministry of Transportation. And 5, that payment of all applicable planning fees be made to the municipality. Does someone wish to move that?
I'll move, Councilor McEwen.
Thank you. Seconder,
I'll second.
Councillor Gorham Matthews, thank you. Discussion. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lamb.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard all kinds of stuff, and I think generally my read of this on council is that we're supportive of this, but I think that the only issue that may be outstanding, I know that the concern I had, I think that Councillor Woods kind of had, was the entryway onto the highway. And then I also heard Councillor McEwen say, I think it was Councillor McEwen, say, well, what about MTO? And shouldn't maybe we'll wait till we get an MTO determination as to what they want. So, along that line, I think John had suggested maybe he could go back to the applicant and say, can you redo that? I don't care if they make the lot smaller somewhere else or whatever, but in order to comply with our whatever 60 meters, if that's what it is, because I am concerned about what we do in the future. I know planning is doesn't set precedents, but it does kind of in a way in people's minds anyway. So if our standard is 60 meters, then I'd like to see us, because certainly lots, there's enough property to do it. I'd like to see us at least approach the applicant to find out why he couldn't do that, and maybe hear back from the MTO. So that's sort of my thoughts on the thing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I could?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to agree with Councilor Lamb on that. It's a little hindsight here. Maybe knowing where the MTO will stand on it could make a big difference on a lot of factors around the design of the lot for the property owner. Maybe we are just a slight bit premature here and trying to make a decision on it without the MTO jumping in. Thank you.
Okay, I'm wondering,
Mayor?
is there, go ahead, Councillor Gorham Matthews.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest was, could we approve what they call lots 1 and 2 that are off Moore Drive? They seem to be fairly typical, and lots 1 and 2 of what we would expect, and then wait to get more information on the other lots, or do they want them all dealt with in one go?
I don't know. Can anyone answer the last question?
Might complicate it, cause more fees.
If I could, Your Worship, I don't think it would. Are they in a hurry? I don't think so. So
But
it could be deferred to get
Yeah,
that MPO feedback first.
To be honest, that's what I was going to suggest, is that it be deferred to see, if that was going to become a problem, and maybe to ask the question, well, why don't you increase the frontage of the two properties a little bit, just so that they do meet our conditions. I understand why they didn't propose to do it, but maybe if we had that information, we could pick it up at another meeting. So I don't know if the mover and seconder are agreeable. Would you be agreeable to?
Yes, I withdraw my motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So can we, is there any objection to deferring this for further information?
No.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so I've got motion withdrawn. Deferred for further information. MTO and frontage on that's Highway 124. Okay, so are we agreed with that then? No objection? Withdrawn. Okay, that brings us to the shore road allowances. I'll read the suggested motion and ask for a mover and seconder. Whereas an application has been submitted by Gary Merritt for the closing and acquisition of the shore road allowance fronting Lot 5, Plan M628, Geographic Township of Mackenzie, now the municipality of Whitestone, District of Parry Sound. And whereas an application has been submitted by Marilyn Pottinger for the closing and acquisition of the shore road allowance fronting Part 2, the Plan PSR 2324, Geographic Township of Mackenzie, now municipality of Whitestone, District of Parry Sound. And whereas an application has been submitted by Lisa Jane Rice for the closing and acquisition of the shore road allowance fronting Lot 4, Plan M628, Geographic Township of Mackenzie, now municipality of Whitestone, District of Parry Sound. And whereas an application has been submitted by Drew Burrell for the closing and acquisition of the shore road allowance fronting Lot 3, Plan M628, Geographic Township of Mackenzie, now municipality of Whitestone, District of Parry Sound. And whereas there are no official plan conflicts, environmental concerns, or planning issues with respect to these applications, for this application, because it's a joint application, I guess. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone approves in principle the closure and acquisition of the shore road allowances subject to current practices and procedures and the payment of fees in accordance with the current municipal fees and charges bylaw for closing of shore road allowances. So, quite a mouthful, but can I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move it, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you, Councilor Lamb, seconded by
I'll second Councilor McEwen.
McEwen. Seconds. Any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? If so, I'll ask the CAO to read the roll for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gore Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion is carried.
all right. Thank you very much. Now then, 5.3, the application to purchase and close the municipal shore road allowance. By the Roots.
I don't think we need to go ahead with this, do we? Just,
Well, I guess it would be just deferred, right? If that is the wish of council.
it's just a staff direction to go back to find out more information.
You know, there is, I do have a motion here that covers that if it'll help. It's, and this is 5.3, whereas an application has been submitted by Christopher and Suzanne Root for the closing and acquisition of part of the municipal road allowance between concessions 4 and 5, lot 11, geographic township of Hagerman, now the municipality of Whitestone, District of Parry Sound. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestone, we just say defer this application for further information.
Sure.
Further information. So I guess to fill out the page, I need a mover and seconder for it.
I'll move.
Councillor Gorham Matthews, seconded by
I'll second. Councilor McEwen.
Councillor McEwen. Any objection to that motion? Okay, hearing none, it's carried. All right. Okay, so we have one more, which involves a public meeting because it is an application for an amendment to the zoning bylaw. So could I get a mover and seconder to move into public meeting?
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
All right, thank you, Councillor Woods. 7:54. Seconder, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. So this one is, because it's a public meeting, there is a bit of introduction that I need to do. Notice of the public meeting has been given. And all of our councilors are present on this call. I will ask the clerk if there have been any written submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there have been none. None received.
Okay. Oh. Public submissions. All right, thank you. The procedure for these, or for this part of the meeting is that we normally take attendance. And I will just go down the list and read into the record who I see that is on the on my participant screen at the moment. Besides myself, Mayor George Comrie, our CAO clerk, Michelle Hendry, our planner, John Jackson, Councillor Brian Woods, Councillor Joe McEwen, Councillor Beth Gorham Matthews, Councillor Joe Lamb. We also have Ed Can. We have an iPhone 3 with the name Jim attached to it. We have Jim Ritchie. We have Larry. Don't have a last name for Larry. We have Margie Saleji. Roger, no last name. Sandra Patterson. Our planning assistant, Paula Macri, and Scott Nash. And I'm assuming that, Madam Clerk, you have the same names in front of you that I do, so you have your attendance list. Anybody who is speaking to this particular matter, please give your name. Please address the chair and please give your name before you speak. And if you're not speaking, please keep your audio muted. Thank you. So with that, again, I would ask our planner or our clerk, whichever one was going to introduce this, to give us the introduction.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's John here. Mr. Jim Anderson has made an application to place a storage building, 1,500 square foot pre-engineered building on his large acreage, which has water frontage on Dubois Lake, down a certain portion of Dubois Trail. The proposed structure is quite a distance from the lake, and it's actually about 22 meters, 72 feet from the trail. I put a little sketch in my short report on this. The challenge that triggered the rezoning application was that typically a storage building shop type structure is accessory to a dwelling. Mr. Anderson would like this building to occur prior to that, so we're turning the accessory building into a principal building by this rezoning for this property, and we refer to the rezoning as being site specific to this property with special provisions in the bylaw. And what we've done, if council has seen the bylaws, simply provided for the accessory building to be built, if you like, before any principal residential or rural type uses. It's quite that straightforward, an application. So I would answer whatever I could. I think perhaps the applicant's on the call, and if there are any questions of the applicant, perhaps he could present those to council as well.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant on the call? Doesn't appear to be. So I will open it up for questions or comments from, let's start with councilors. And oh, sorry, are you iPhone 3 Jim, are you the applicant? Your microphone is muted, sir.
Hello?
There we go.
No,
Yes,
I'm
hi,
not-
James Anderson, how are you?
Okay, I'm not the applicant, Jim Ritchie. I'm not the applicant, okay?
Sorry, Mr. Ritchie, I think we have Mr. Anderson already on the line. Go ahead, please, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, we're wanting to put a storage unit before we build our a house on that property.
Anything else we should know about
Sorry, I'm
this?
out in the middle. I'm hoping everybody can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Is there anything else about this that Mr. Jackson didn't already mention that you want us to know? Okay, I'm thinking that's no. Once again, your microphone is muted, Jim.
Are you speaking to me, Jim Ritchie, or to Jim Anderson?
I'm sorry, I'm still speaking to Jim Anderson. I can see that his phone is
Sorry,
popped up
yeah.
on the screen here.
I think I just unmuted it.
All right. Did you have
Yes.
something further you wanted to say?
No, like I said, we're trying to look at building a storage unit first. We do plan on putting another building, an occupant house on that property. But just financials is more of the building before the house.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Now, Mr. Ritchie, did you wish to speak?
No, I'm just really observing. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay. Thanks. You can mute your phone then. Thank you. All right. So are there questions or comments from councilors at this point?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Councillor Woods.
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
My first initial question, and I'll just ask this one first and then give someone else an opportunity to talk. Do we normally do this? Let somebody build a 1,500 square foot garage before they're going to put up a cottage on a waterfront property?
Mr. Jackson?
We've done it before. In fact, in some instances, we've done it where there was no expectation that there would be a principal building. I think the qualification here, if I might, is that it's well off the trail and well off the shoreline in terms of what Mr. Anderson's proposing. So, you know, it's a little off sort of the normal sequence, but it's not crazy. Like if Mr. Anderson is a contractor that, for example, I'm not sure what he does, but if he's a contractor that's capable of undertaking his own home construction, you know, you may want to have equipment housed and secure while he's doing that. But he didn't really go into any detail, so I'm not sure. That's pure speculation. But it's not atypical, Councillor Woods.
Would it be, this application is to rezone the entire parcel, am I correct?
Yes, we are putting it in a special exception to allow this building to take place. Because it's all one parcel, we
Yeah.
place the zoning on the whole of the property, although I think the little site plan is where
Yeah.
it's already cleared for the building.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor? May I ask you a
Councillor
question?
Gorham Matthews, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not that familiar with this type of scenario. Would we ever put a condition or anything that where we ask that the principal building, you know, the cottage or the home be constructed within a certain time period so that we're not getting in the situation where you have a property where there's just an outbuilding and not a residence? or does that not normally occur when we do this type of application? I'm just not that familiar with it, so I was just wondering.
Yeah, that's a tool we have in our toolbox, and it's called the temporary zoning provision. And we could say that within 3 years, the applicant has to place a principal dwelling or principal use, which is a dwelling on the property. That can be done.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead, Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson, there's a sketch on the last page of your report which references or sends us to the bylaw and notices and such. I'm wondering if you can explain that sketch there. It's a nice detailed sketch. It's 180 feet across the back and 130 feet down the side. And it shows the shop, which was on the big sketches also, or on the photo, 72 feet in from Dubois Road. I'm just wondering what the significance is of that sketch that shows a garage and the future house and the post shop. It's good to see some planning and thought going into it. If that's what it is, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I believe through your worship, I believe that's the cleared area in the location of where he wishes to develop a future home and the shop.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Jackson, if I recall, when I was first on council, we did this kind of an exception down the bunny trail at one location. I could be wrong. Maybe there was some kind of a principal dwelling there, but I don't believe there was. So I think it was done on kind of the same premise. So this is not really a first time go or run around this.
No, there have been a few of this sort of reverse order. A lot of winter enthusiasts, for example, would put a shop up for snowmobiles and ATVs that they would be able to use on a rural property. And as I said, in that case, there was no expectation of putting a home on the property at any time.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, Councillor
Mr.
Lamb.
Mayor,
Okay, Councillor Lamb, I'll take Councillor Lamb and then Councillor Woods.
Yeah, I had some concern, not so much against this gentleman or whatever, but you know, we've had issues in the community, and a big issue out on Highway 124 with Mr. Greenwood and shops going in that initially, you know, ended up a commercial property and that sort of thing. And I guess that's what came to mind when I first read this, that, you know, is the end game here really, you know, eventually subdividing this and somehow developing the shop in that area as a commercial property. And then, and perhaps Mr. Anderson could answer that for us. But my second concern is that, you know, again, I'm concerned about precedent. We maybe have done it, you know, once before, but I mean, anyone coming forward and saying, hey, you know, I've got a rural piece of property, I want to put a garage up first and whatever, and how do we tell them no, right? And maybe the answer is we tell everybody yes. But I do like the stipulation that if we allow this building to go up, that it's conditional upon a permanent or a building, residential building being put on the property within, and I don't know what the building code is. I know when you get a permit, you have to put your building up. I thought it was 2 years, but maybe it's 3 years. If it's 3 years, I don't have a problem with it. But but whatever the building code is, so that, you know, we're consistent with maybe some other people who want to develop and put up a small storage building of some sort before the main building is up. So those are my two kind of concerns. So Mr. Anderson, can you tell us what your plans are with respect to the shop in terms of the future?
Yes, so Sandra and myself, we want to put up a bungalow, a residence on that parcel that we've done. Eventually, we would like to build a cottage on the waterfront, but finances and everything like that, just buying the property. Right now, it's, you know, if we get the shop, you know, my tools, my stuff can be protected. And then I'm hoping within the next 2 years, we can build a house on that property.
So it wouldn't bother you then if we put a condition that you're allowed to put the building up as long as within 2 years you put a structure, a residence on the property?
Yeah, that's what the game plan is me being a contractor. We just finished building our house on Wawash Cache. And that's why we bought the property there. It's close to our house. So that way my tools, my equipment are close. But we also want to have a small bungalow or something like that. So we can either rent out or our kids can move in. That's what our game plan is.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the question that I would have as a follow-on to that, sorry to to jump the queue here, but is it your intention, Mr. Anderson, to run a business out of this shop? Like, is this?
No, my business is out of Barrie. I commute back and forth to Barrie. But because we live up here now, I needed my stuff that if I'm working here, I have some stuff close. Most of my shop's going to be, you know, my boat, my Sea-Doos, but I also have equipment that I need to protect.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. I think Councillor Woods was next.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this would be to John. John, so right now the property, I know you know that I know this property very well. It's split on the very last diagram that we have. It's split zoning on this. It's rural on one half and then waterfront 1 limited services on the other half. So the whole entire parcel, all 130 acres, 128 acres, I think it is going to be rezoned to the rural 8 exception. I think I read in here.
No, you know, it looks like just the westerly lot is proposed to be rezoned to the rural special exception 8. And so the balance will be left as waterfront.
So then if, okay, hang on a minute here. So the 1,500 square foot shop and then a 700 to 800 square foot bungalow and a garage in the future is in the one diagram that we have here. And that's only going to be on the one side of the property?
Correct.
And then on the other side, at a later date, he wants to build a cottage?
It depends on the applicable proposal. I don't know what the expectations other than what you just heard from Mr. Anderson are. Keep in mind, the usual practice is one parcel, one dwelling, but there are some changes to that which would allow what's called an accessory dwelling.
Okay. And Dubois Trail, just so everyone's clear, that is a seasonal road, right? It's not a road that we maintain.
Correct.
And
So,
now, John, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I
go,
just got
no,
one
go,
more
go
quick
ahead.
one.
Yeah, please finish. Go ahead. Yeah.
So when we're doing rezone applications like this, does this get mailed out to all the neighbors that would be, within so many meters? What's the rule there again? I don't remember.
Yes, everyone within 400 feet, 120 meters, would have been circulated a copy of this proposal.
So every property within 400, how much feet?
Yep, 400 feet or 120 meters if you prefer metric.
Of the entire parcel of the property, or just this one half?
One half.
Why one half if it's one property?
Um,
And it's all,
It's just the way the legislation reads. So the legislation sets out a notice requirement 400 feet from the lands that are being considered for rezoning, which is different than a severance. A severance is the whole parcel. So if you're only severing off an acre on a 200-acre parcel, you go to the extent of the ownership. But for a rezoning, just from the lands that are proposed to be rezoned.
so the people at the end of the Bois Trail, they weren't notified then?
They may not have been caught, but I think it would catch most of them. If you were to, it appears to be 6 properties adjacent to this property, or actually a few more when you look at the westerly half, probably 7 or 8 or 10. They would have all been notified. But there may be one property at the end that's outside that 400-foot radius.
Okay, that's all. Thanks, John.
So John, I don't see a diagram anywhere that shows what the current zoning is.
Oh, it's in the bylaw, your worship.
Oh, it's in the bylaw. Oh, okay. Gonna jump ahead a piece then. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask Mr. Jackson another question.
Sure, go ahead.
Rezoning from RU to rural exceptional, RU8, that only includes half of the property, subject property owned by Mr. Anderson. So that is not connected in essence once it's rezoned with the waterfront WF1 LS, if I read that correctly. So that puts him totally on a private road and a non-waterfront property once that's zoned. Does that not contradict a bit of what we are heading toward? Or fits in essence what we're looking at doing probably, but
No,
I'm just
actually,
wondering-
to clarify that this property is a waterfront property. So it is one parcel. The zoning change does not change the fact that you only have one parcel, one deeded property.
Okay.
So just from my edification, on the diagram in the zoning bylaw that you're referring to, the property marked WF1-14 and the property WF1-13 are the same? They're
Yes.
two separate parcels owned by the same owner, or they're one parcel?
One parcel.
So we have specified simply the western, I guess it's the western half of it then is to be rezoned. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead,
all right.
Councillor Lamb.
Sorry. Yeah, so I'm kind of getting confused here, which is easily done, I guess. So you can't put a second residence on that property. There's only one property. So if Mr. Anderson decides to put a bungalow up where he's proposing on his drawing, you can't go put a second residence down at the lake, isn't that correct? You can't put two residences on one property. Isn't that correct, Mr. John?
Yes, yes, those are the rules.
So the question is, to Mr. Anderson, if you were going to put a residence up, why wouldn't you put it on the lake? As opposed to, I just see us, I see a severance coming, and I see, two separate, I see an end game here that maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but is this really about, is this a two-step process to a subdivide is my question. You're going to put a house up in one area, and then a year or two from now, there's an application to say, hey, now we want to build on the lake, so we want to subdivide our lot and have two and have two. Is that what this is all about? Really? I mean, but,
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead. Who?
So
Sorry,
with following all our applications, we're trying to follow all the rules. So I was told that we have to have a residence. So I can't afford to put a residence at the lake right now because I'd have to build a road right to the lake. So I was figuring if I had to put a residence up in a certain amount of time would be where I have it cleared, where it's more cost effective for me to do it.
okay.
Well, I think the question that's being asked, sorry, Jim, is it possible for you to mute your phone? Oh, thank you. That's good. That's where the echo is coming from, I think. John, what are the conditions under which the future development that Councillor Lamb is concerned about could take place? I mean, is this something that we need to preclude specifically, or?
There's an interesting side issue here, because this property serves, I'm not sure the exact number, but let's say a handful of water access properties. So the frontage that Mr. Anderson has on the lake is encumbered by a landing facility that accommodates water access needs as well. I'm not sure how that weighs in. All I can think to say is that this is the application before council. I don't know what the rules will be in the future that might allow him a second dwelling, or if he has to make that. Right now, he would have to make a separate application to do so. I don't really know how to answer sort of what might come along in the future without saying it would have to be assessed at that time. But as the rules are, Mr. Councillor Lamb has got them correctly identified. One parcel, one house. And it's the water frontage on this property that gives him the right to develop it under our present regime.
And the water access, if I'm not mistaken, is over in the bottom right-hand corner of WF1-13 limited service, right? Where there's a sort of a funny looking triangle that comes up there. Not sure what
Right.
that is. That's where it is. That's where to be honest, it looks like that's that water access is on an EP, is on EP. Am I wrong?
I can answer that for you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, sure. I mean, it may not be relevant to the discussion, but that's just observation.
I could jog your memory a few months back when we talked about the properties that were down the lake on the point, and you asked about the
Yeah.
access. It comes through this property off of 520.
Yeah.
Which is what's known as Evergreen Trail.
Yeah.
And comes down through this property, and not where the water access is for this property, but the property right next to it. It cuts through there down to a boat launch area that is on EP. And there is a section laid out that was intended for the parking, and it is written up as right of way.
Oh, I see. Okay. So that's what the water access is. It's not the part that I'm talking about, or is that
No,
water
it's
access
not
too?
on that property. No, it's not. It's not. The water access isn't on this actual property. It cuts through this property. There's a
Yeah.
trail, potential road that goes all the way through it, basically from the northeasternly corner, I guess it would be, looking at the page, and then cuts down on an angle to that lot just next to where the waterfront for this lot would be.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to prolong this. So are there any other questions or comments? If not, we can close our public meeting and go back to the bylaws. Mover and seconder to close the public meeting and reconvene into regular council.
I'll make the motion, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by,
I'll second Councillor Woods.
okay. And it's 8:28. I'm assuming there's no objection to that motion. 28. So, that brings us to our bylaws section, and we have James Anderson and Sandra Patterson in the municipality of Whitestone. This is his. Okay, this is the one we just did, sorry. Let me make sure I get them in the right order. 7.1. There is a suggested motion here, which is whereas bylaws 01-2022 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 07-2018, the zoning bylaw, to rezone part of lot 32, concession 1, geographic township of Mackenzie, now in the municipality of Whitestone, from the rural RU zone to a rural RU exception zone by James Anderson and Sandra Patterson in the municipality of Whitestone be given a first and second reading. And then now therefore be it resolved that bylaw 01-2022 be given a third and final reading and enacted as of this date. Is there a mover and seconder for this motion? It sounds like no one, am I correct in assuming that no one wishes to move this? And if that's the case, yeah, can I ask what you are, what what you would like to do with it? If there's any, is there any other action, or are we rejecting the application to rezone?
Oh, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gorham Matthews.
So I think I would be more comfortable if we put in something about constructing a principal residence, one residence within a certain time period, so that we don't get into a situation where we have a standalone shop.
Okay, would you have a wording that you would like to suggest that we amend this with?
I'm probably not the one with the planning experience to
Um,
to have
Mr.
that
Mayor?
wording.
Mr. Mayor?
y-
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I'd like to kind of move this along. I think I read councilors as a little leery here, because, we've went through a heck of a thing on 124, in my mind, with this same kind of sort of thing. And interspersed in here is the back lot development, and not to prejudge what we do, but if we, if this was ever came forward to split off and put another cottage down on the lake somewhere on Dubois Lake, and we ended up, let's say we don't go ahead with the backlot development thing, then we've spun off a building and a bungalow on a private road, which is against our bylaws, sort of. So I just feel really uncomfortable with this because, again, I know John says, oh, every planning application is different, but it isn't to people. People see, before I'm to build my bungalow or my principal residence, I'm able to put up a big building. And whereas everyone else, you're told, no, you can put a 10 by 10 building up, or you can bring in a trailer for the first couple of years while you're building. But none of them have ever been told, you can build a 1,500 square foot garage or building or storage building, then go build your principal residence. That's not as common as John would put out us doing. So without, getting too verbose about this, I just feel kind of sort of along the same lines as Councillor Gorham Matthews, that we need to put a stipulation of, if we approve this and you put that built 1,500 square foot building up, you must build a principal residence within whatever the building code is, 2 years. If that's what it is, within 2 years, you must put a principal residence up. But the question is, what happens if that doesn't happen? What's the ramification of that 2 years out? If Mr. Anderson says, with all due respect, well, I don't have the money to do that, so I didn't do it. Now you've got a building, and it's only after the building goes up that all the people in the area start saying, look at that building, right? And so I don't know, I just feel leery, and I think others feel leery, and that's why nobody came forward and said, let's move this thing. So I don't know what to do with it. I guess if he wants to build the building and he has a guarantee, but I want to know what happens from John Jackson if within 2 years he doesn't build that building, the principal residence, what happens? And I also want to entrench that it's one building for one lot. So I don't know how we do that or what the verbiage is, but those are my thoughts on it. And I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just we have to deal with every resident in Whitestone and be very careful of what the perception is. So those are my thoughts. So I'm kind of agreeing with Councillor Gorham Matthews, but I do want that question answered, that what happens, nothing against Mr. Anderson, I'm sure he does plan to build the building, but what happens if he can't? Says, I don't have the money, I can't do it. What happens?
Okay, well, if we were going to add conditions to it, we would have to actually amend the bylaw, and the bylaw, of course, has already been drafted. If you look a little further down in the package, you'll see it says amend by adding the following paragraph 4.048 and says a garage storage building up to 150 meters may be permitted, etc., subject to a minimum setback from Dubois Trail of 20 meters and all other applicable requirements for the rural zone. And you would also have to say subject to a condition of some sort or other. And so I think what we have to do, this is the actual bylaw itself, right? So I think my judgment here is that the bylaw is not ready for us to pass. So I would suggest that we defer this and refer it back to staff and Mr. Anderson and have a, and they can perhaps come up with something that would address the concerns that counselors have expressed. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Councilor Lamb summed it up quite well. I still have concern about having a large property, which is effectively the width of 200-acre lots. And they're in waterfront zone now, and we're going to put a special recognition to make one RU special or exceptional. There just seems to be some loose end there somehow. Like we're in essence dividing the property by zoning for the applicant, which may or may not be an issue.
I'll let I'll let John Jackson clarify this, but I thought I heard that the western portion is already is rural. And that's the only part that's the western 100-acre section. The eastern 100-acre section is waterfront one limited service. Am I wrong about that?
I thought it was the whole thing being waterfront inclusive of the two lots, but maybe
our proposed amendment is from rural to rural exception, not from waterfront to rural exception. John, can you help us out here?
Let me just double check that, but because I think the whole of the property, no, you're right. It is from rural to rural exception. So it already has a split zoning on it.
okay. That's I didn't understand. I saw the WF 1-14, which must refer to the waterfront properties below it on the zoning map. So
Just if I could,
Okay.
Your Worship, operationally, there is a provision for a zoning bylaw to be put in place for a temporary period up to 3 years. And the way that operates is that we would draft the wording to say that the RU-8 is in effect for up to 3 years, if that was the amount of time. That just happens to be the maximum time period that you can allow for a temporary use bylaw. At the end of that 3-year period, the exception disappears as if it never existed. And if it disappears and there is no dwelling put in place, it then puts that property in contravention. So that's how it kind of guarantees that you will get what the temporary bylaw wants you to get at that time. I don't know if that's confusing or not, but that's how these temporary period zonings work.
Okay, well, thank you. I think you may have suggested a remedy, but I'm still suggesting that maybe it would be appropriate to take it offline and make sure that works for the applicant and then bring it back and
Well, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with the deferral, Your Worship. I'm just trying to assist Councillor Lamb in understanding how this operates.
Mr. Mayor,
go
I have
ahead,
no problem with
Mr.
the
Anderson.
allowance. Because I'm planning on doing one within 3 years anyways.
So, all right, well, I'm just kind of reluctant to rush through, because what we would have to do is we would have to amend the bylaw. So, and the motion to approve the rezoning, both of them would have to change, not in a huge way, but I'm wondering if we could just bring it back in a month's time and when we are to our next meeting and have. Is that okay with everybody? If we do that,
Okay with me.
any opposition? All right, my note will be it's deferred for amendment to motion and bylaw.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Yeah, if Mr. Anderson is still on the call, I just want him to know that, you know, from my perspective anyway, this is Councillor Lamb, this is going to get done. It's just a matter of clarifying. And I think John helped me over the hump and the question I had in terms of the 3 years. So I don't want you going away thinking, you know, this is not going to get done or worrying or stewing too much over this. I think it'll go away, and my guess is it'll come back next month with a couple of explanations and probably get done. So I just wanted to make that comment. So thank you.
okay, thanks. Yes, that would, that's kind of my interpretation of the discussion too. Thank you. Okay, if we could move on to 7.2, which is the agreement for conditions of approval of consent to Shirley Mine. Now, in that particular case, what did we do with that particular one? We didn't do anything with it. Sorry, we haven't discussed that. So, you know what? I wonder if some introduction from either our CAO or our planner or Paula would be appropriate at this point, just so everybody knows, understands what we're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It appears our planner has left. I would like Paula to introduce this. She is having trouble unmuting. Can someone remind me if you're on a phone? Is it *6?
It is *6. She's still on the call, showing on the call, but she's
Paula, if you're listening, which I believe you are, could you please try *6 so you can speak to council about this? This is one of the ones that Paula has been working on. We'll give her a minute to try. I don't know what kind of a phone she has, and it may not make any difference.
well, you know, perhaps while we're, oh no, she's still there. Just I saw the screen move, so I thought she'd dropped off, but
She sent me a text. She says, I'm trying.
okay, well, you know what, while she's doing that, if you don't mind, maybe we'll just move, in the interest of time, we'll just move to item number 7.3, and she can keep trying to come on. It's a little bit more straightforward, if you will. This particular one, once again, Madam CEO, you can probably introduce this one right? It's Costello.
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's pretty
Uh,
straightforward.
As council will recall, there was a direction to staff to negotiate with Mrs. Costello for the purchase of the property, this small little property on Schwaniga Lake, and the purchase price was based on the value that was put on it by our real estate agent who does these things for us. Appraisal, I was going to say assessment, it was an appraisal. So everyone is agreeable, and this was really a bylaw that allows council and staff to move forward with this purchase. It's the final step, well, other than the registering, but this gives the authority to move forward, and it authorizes the sale. These lands have already been declared surplus, but we decided to declare them surplus again because that was done several years ago, and it allows for the execution of the documents by the mayor and clerk to allow for this particular land transaction.
So thank you, Madam CAO. What I will do is I will read the suggested motion and ask for a mover and seconder. I was going to suggest before I do that, Michelle, you I believe have the ability to unmute Paula when we finish this. Do you not? You're the host, right?
Yes, but I can ask people to unmute, but I can't actually unmute them.
Are you sure?
Yes, I've tried that in
Okay.
the past.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But I'm going to ask Paula to hang up and,
Can you hear me now?
We
Can
got
you hear
you.
me now?
Thank
Okay.
you.
yes.
Thank
So
you,
just stand by,
Paula.
we're
Sorry.
dealing with Costello.
We've just moved on to item 7.3 because we thought we could probably deal with it while we were waiting for you. So I'm going to read the motion and ask for a mover and seconder. That bylaw 03-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the sale of lot 12, plan 305. I don't see the concession and but anyway, let's see if it's in. Oh, it's a registrar's compiled plan 305. That's why. And anyway, the assessment roll number is in the bylaw itself, so we're good. Sorry about that. The sale of lot 12, plan 305 to Kathleen Costello, to be read a first and second time the 7th day of January 2022, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this 7th day of January 2022, and numbered 03-2022. Can I get a mover and seconder for?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Seconded by.
I'll second.
I'll
Councillor Woods.
second.
Okay, thank you. I got Councillor Woods. Is there any discussion about this one?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm trying to look up the bylaw, but it may be in there. I've spoke to Kathleen on several occasions, and as it turned out, she goes way back with our families, Kath and myself. We didn't recognize that when we started talking, but my concern all along isn't her buying this. She's certainly, I'm happy that she is, but it's such a little tiny piddly piece of land that she can't build on. And no matter what I said, so Kathleen, you realize that when you buy this, you might be able to pitch a tent on there, but you can't build on it. Well, what happens if I have a 10 by 20 little storage set? No, you can't build on it, right? It's against our zoning or whatever bylaws, right? And so I just want to, is there some way, or maybe it's in the bylaw, that it says this is unbuildable. This land is unbuildable. You're just buying it for sentimental, emotional purposes because your father owned it way back and it went into tax arrears many years ago. So I want to cover that off. Is that covered off is my question to, I guess, the Madam CAO.
Do you want
Thank
to
you, Mr.
answer?
Mayor.
By the way, the bylaw starts on page 38 of 39.
Okay,
Uh,
It
that-
starts
that-
and ends on page 38 of 39. But it doesn't say that is the short answer. At least I just read it. I don't see it, but
No, that doesn't speak to it. Both myself and Ms. Macri have advised Kathleen, and I believe it was in one of the letters that we sent her. She is aware of that. She hasn't pushed back as far as I know. And I think all we can do is keep an eye on the property. You know, people will notice if she starts building, and the municipality will eventually notice if she builds something. But she is well aware that she is not able to build there, and seemed quite satisfied, as far as I know, that she just wants to go out, canoe, you know, put a tent on it, spend a night or two, and really just own it for sentimental value.
okay, and I don't want to be misunderstood. I wasn't trying to say that she would build a building illegally. What I was saying is she probably will come back and ask to build a building there, right? No matter what she's been told. And so we'll have to then say, no, you can't again, right? So anyway, it is what it is. She could go pitch the tent there anyway. That's the sad part, without paying the $4,000. But if that's what she wants for sentimental reasons, then I'm all for it. So, okay, thank you.
all right.
Can
Are
I
there any?
also add- Can I also add,
Go ahead, Paula, please. Yes.
yeah, pursuant to section 3.42 of our municipal zoning bylaw, that particular lot does not meet the requirement of at least 1,600 square meters. The lot is only 809 square meters, so it's 0.2 acres. So she's not able to build anything on that particular property.
Oh, no, I realize that. And I told her that many times. I just want her to make sure she realizes it.
Yes, she does realize that. I have confirmed that with her in a letter.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
Welcome.
So are there any other comments or questions from councilors? If not, I will ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gore Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. So now we could go back to 7.2. If I can find what I did with it. And since we have, well, anyway, Paula, you can talk while I'm looking for the order paper. We were looking for a little bit of background on the mine.
Okay, no problem.
Bylaw.
Through your
Here it is.
worship, Shirley Main applied for a severance on or about February 3rd of last year. Council passed a resolution with certain conditions. The conditions were rezoning the property from RU to an RR zone, to pay a parkland dedication fee, receiving 911 address, and payment of any planning fees. Also, she had to enter into a 5126 agreement to be registered against the severed and retained lands to indemnify the municipality for the private use of the concession road allowance, and to ensure that its standard is capable of accommodating emergency vehicles. The rezoning was completed. I believe it was middle of last year. I received the parkland dedication fee. The only outstanding matter is the registration of the survey. I spoke to Bob Hawkins on Friday, and I believe him and his crew, actually just his crew, was going out to the property to plot the monuments, and the registration of the survey should be finalized sometime this week. So this is why the consent agreement is in front of council. I also forgot to mention that her consent lapses February 23rd of this year.
Okay, thank you very much, Paula, for that introduction. The actual, the bylaw itself starts, the consent agreement starts on page 33 of the revised package. And you can see there that the survey plan describing the several lands is 42R, and the actual registration number isn't there because it hasn't been registered. But before the CAO clerk or I would sign it, that would be filled in. And you can see the bylaw itself in the preceding pages, which it starts on page, what is it, 31 of 39. So anyway, I would ask for a mover and seconder for the following, please. That bylaw 02-2022 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement for conditions of approval of consent B02/2021 Whitestone under the Planning Act with the applicant Shirley Mine be read a first and second time this 17th day of January 2022, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this 7th day of January 2022 and numbered 02-2022. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Seconded by.
I'll second Councillor Lamb.
Okay, Councillor Lamb, I heard. Is there any further discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gore Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion is carried.
thank you. All right. That brings us to item 8, which is councillor items. Are there any councillor items, announcements, or questions from councillors? I will record show there were none. Questions from the public? And once again, I hear none. So, can we get a mover and seconder for our confirmatory bylaw, please?
I'll move, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you. Seconded by.
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Any objection? All right. Thank you, and a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, seconded by.
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
All right, thank you. So we stand adjourned at 9:01 p.m. until tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for our regular meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening. What's left of it.
Good evening. Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.